I hope every single one of you have enjoyed that thoroughly. Welcome to the first ever live stream on the Disciple of Christ podcast. If you haven't noticed already, there was technical difficulties with the audio. It is live now. Share this with others. There is definitely going to be participation via questions in the live chat. I believe I might even dare I offer brownies to whoever has the best question inside of there. I might. I reserve the right to exclude shipping to Alaska or Hawaii. And I know there might even be a couple of you in Australia having talked to you. It's like, g'day, mate. You're supposed to be asleep right now. But if you're tuning in and you got a question, put it there. I'm just not sending brownies to Australia. I do have with us today Dustin and Marin Smith. Wonderful to have you both on the Disciple of Christ podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Marin, tell us about the family you've got with you today.
We have 7 kids. 6 of them were girls, and we finally got our one boy.
Okay.
They range in age from 8 months to 18 years.
Okay. I learned the hard way that the 8-month-old is very capable of ripping out beard hairs. So quite dangerous. You guys might be liable for the damages. But don't worry, this is insured. You guys might also remember Dustin Smith from such films as Who Killed Joseph Smith? Tell about your role inside of that movie.
Well, I played Hiram Smith. Got to have my head blown apart.
Now, remind me, the gun that you're seeing right behind you, is that the one that took you out? Or was it a single shot that took you out?
It was either that one or one just like it. A lot like it.
It's very, very nice. I'm just hoping I do not offend the YouTube algorithm gods by having firearms available in the background. These are replicas, not the real thing. But I will let you know, more than one person in this room is packing the real thing. Now, as of recent, I've known you guys for a number of years now, probably what, 2.5 years?
Something like that.
I've been inside of your home and I've eaten pancakes, which did fill my soul with great joy. And I was desirous that my family should partake of it also, but it was just me there that day. You've been on quite a faith journey, and as of right now, it has even turned into accusations against you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were discussing earlier to where we don't want to do anything that brings darkness, but it seems like you've heard things about you. Has anybody ever said specifically, you are charged with such and such?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because literally about 2 hours ago, I received the very first one of those. And I noticed it about half an hour ago.
How long ago did you hear rumors circulating about you guys being involved in evil things that the community must respond to? How long ago?
Just a little less than 2 weeks ago.
Okay. What kind of accusations?
Oh man, everything from priestcraft to child abuse to Satanism.
Asking for money.
Yeah. Scamming people, basically. I don't know if that's the word used, but everything we've heard has been through the grapevine. You know, nobody actually approached us about any of this stuff until just, like I said, 2 hours ago.
About 2 hours ago. And so this is
But it was more of a kind of a, it came across more of a, as part of what sounded kind of like a threat.
Yeah, because we're going live right now before 11 here. It's before 11 a.m. Mountain time here in Utah. If I understand right, tonight people are holding some sort of official meeting. Do you consider official? Is it a meeting that you plan on being a part of?
You know, we've never been invited to any of these meetings. They've been done intentionally behind our backs. We were not notified of any of it. We found out through the grapevine a day or two later. We started getting the first little pieces the next day. Not enough to make heads or tails of what was even really going on. Somebody sent a text saying, well, what's your side of the narrative? I'm thinking, the narrative, what is it? What are you even talking about?
Yeah.
Well, we are invited to the one tonight, though. Just make that clear.
Yeah, you're invited.
Yeah. But yeah, I've never agreed to any of these meetings. Didn't even know about them until after the fact. And this one's like, okay, so now they want us to, presumably because of all the public outrage.
Okay. So hopefully I'm going to be good enough at asking questions that'll answer what anybody might have on their mind. I know it almost feels bad because, hey, this channel has been so dedicated to faith journey, but I'm confident that even in talking about these accusations against you, I do believe your faith journey is going to come out as a result of it. So, for those of you who are tuned in, I want to say again, put any questions down below, whether it's one that you personally have or one that you've heard, any rumors that you've got cleared up. Bam, now's the time for it. Let me start off by asking this. I've heard the accusation specifically priestcraft. You're charged with priestcraft. You've heard that accusation, haven't you?
That's the one I first heard about 2 hours ago.
Let's-
About half an hour ago is when I saw it.
Let me word it this way. You guys have put off the indication that others need to support you in your journey so you can keep doing what the Lord tells you to do, whether that's preaching, and you've let others know that you're reliant upon their support for you to keep going. Is that a fair characterization?
No, I mean, I wouldn't look at it that way. I would look at it more like we trust the Lord for our support, and He told us we would. This happened about how many years ago?
4.
About 4 years ago. We were praying, and we just told the Lord, we want to dedicate our whole lives to you. We just don't want to do what we've been doing. We're tired of it. We would just love to dedicate our lives completely, to you. And when we first said that, we got the answer kind of, no, not yet, because we didn't have, a lot of money that we could just live off of at that time.
How big was the family at that time? Because now it's grown to 7 children.
We had 5 kids at the time. Feel free to jump into us, by the way.
Tell me, because what you're describing is personal covenant kind of language, wanting to dedicate oneself to the Lord. And it's pretty common in our community where everybody understands there's a level of commitment that all of us make, but very few feel the responsibility to where leave everything else and just focus on this. What was your experience making this kind of a covenant language in prayer with your wife? What was your intention? What was the response that came?
Well, almost exactly 6 years ago, I had an experience with the Lord where I committed to Him that I would do absolutely everything He wanted me to do, no matter what it was, no matter how scary, how uncomfortable, how painful. Even if I were to lose my life, my reputation, my family, my business, home, everything. I just, as I like to put it, laid it all on the altar.
It sounds like you're mentally going through the list of, hey, here's all the implications that I can think of. And I want you to know, Lord, I'm not holding back. Is that fair?
Yeah. And since that time, there have been only two occasions where I didn't just do exactly what the Spirit wanted me to do right when He wanted me to do it. The first one was kind of an experiment because I'd been going for probably a year and a half by just doing whatever the Spirit told me to do without hesitation. And I decided to experiment. Just, what would happen if, well, what happened is I was on my way, excuse me, on my way to a seminar, and it was a 2-day seminar. I'd been to the first day, and everything went the way I'd expected to go. But then the second day, I was on my way walking out from my house to my car that was parked in the front yard. And I got the prompting to go back in the house and grab your jacket. And so I started to go back to grab my jacket, and I thought, okay, I'm going to try an experiment just to see what happens.
You recognize the communication, and now you're making a deliberate decision to disobey it.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So I thought, okay, to grab my jacket, how bad can that be? It's an indoor activity. The temperature was comfortable the whole time. It was even hot, warm, nice and warm outside. So I thought this is kind of a strange prompting, but we'll just see what happens. Well, I got to the event, and something was wrong with the air conditioner, where it was blasting full blast continually, like nonstop, and they couldn't figure out how to stop it.
In what seemed like a malfunctioning way?
Yeah. And so I was just shivering the whole time, and there were people that had blankets over them, and
you were even asking about, should you get a jacket here? So you're somebody who's sensitive to those colder temperatures.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you interpret that response in disobeying a prompting from the Spirit?
How would I interpret that
Yeah, yeah.
response?
In other words, it sounds like you. Here's what I'm hearing from you. You recognize there's negative consequences if I don't follow up on these promptings right there at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I figured there would be. I just kinda wanna just experiment for one
So
time.
let me ask this: what was your employment situation when you as man and wife wanted to enter into this covenant? Heavenly Father will do whatever you want, whatever it takes. What was your employment situation like? What was your living situation like? We already know it was 5 kiddos.
Well, I was a financial advisor for, I'm gonna say roughly 15 years by that point. I was an extremely hard worker, I'm a workaholic. I work around the clock basically. Even back then I was working, really hard, really dedicated to, as I saw helping people, when I was first, I almost said inducted into, but, when I first entered the industry, um, I'd had an experience with a financial advisor that, I was really excited about at first, but then later on, I learned more, and I came to the conclusion that the advice that he'd given me was in his own best interest rather than ours. He earned a big paycheck, and, we didn't get quite what we had signed up for, and I felt really, really angry, really bitter about that, which, is unusual for me. I'm usually almost always really even kill. But this really got under my skin because I felt like I'd been scammed. And, so I started complaining to anyone that would hear, about how awful this experience was. And then, out of the blue, I heard, well, it was more of an impression, like rather than complain about it, why don't you do something about it? And, I just thought, well, that's odd because I don't really know a whole lot about it. So
And
I'm
you're talking
not
about financial
qualified.
advising.
Yeah, I'm not qualified to do that. Um, but then the voice just kept, or the impression, just kept coming, um, for, I want to say about maybe 3 months before I finally just gave in and thought, okay, well, I guess I got to change careers and do this. Um, it's kind of interesting because I was telling this story to somebody who had left the industry, long ago. He was a stockbroker, and he said, "Well, that's interesting because it sounds like you entered the financial industry for the same reason I left it."
Ah. Well, so let me go to this. You mentioned that you were recognizing a response from Heavenly Father saying, "Not quite yet." It sounds like you recognize it wasn't time to. You're still have duties to maintain employment, take care of finances for the family.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and there was two more kiddos on the way. Will you at least briefly share the manner in which these kiddos were born? Most people are viewing modern hospitals with all of the available support there. Is that what it's like these last 2 kids?
No, so that's what it was like for the first 5 kids. I did, epidurals, I was induced for all of them, I loved it, no pain, everything in the hospital. Maybe with one of our kids, there was some complications a little
Yeah.
bit, but now I see that as those complications were because I had it in the hospital. So for our last 2, we decided, uh, as soon as we kind of woke up to a lot of stuff, about 4 years ago, I just thought, that's not the right way for us. We wanted to so when so our second to last child is our son, and he just turned 3 this week, and then Hazel, who's 8 months. So both of them were home births.
Yeah. Eh, how did things transition into, the accusations right now is you guys are trying to live off of others so you can do the work the way that you think it's supposed to be done rather than how the Lord's done. Have you guys ever asked people for money?
No,
Not even once?
No,
no.
absolutely not.
As you try to search your memory banks right now, have you give the insinuation that others should be supporting you financially?
I sure hope not. Like, we've never seen it that way. A few years ago when we were talking about it earlier, the instructions we were given was, you know, yes, it's the time a little later that, you're just trust me. Like, we had income, but we had passive income that mostly paid for all our bills, but there was this gap.
Yeah.
And Dustin spent a lot of time marketing and to get that gap of what we needed paid for, like so we could live off, everything we earned. But what the Lord said was just trust me and I'll help with that gap. And honestly, the way I interpreted that was like, oh, this makes so much sense. He has most of our income's passive. This will be really, he can spend most of his time devoted to the Lord. What will happen is the Lord will just do his marketing for him. Basically, the way I figured it would happen was he'd just get some clients that he didn't really have to work a whole lot for, so it wouldn't take a lot of his time, so he could be mostly a full-time missionary as we saw it. And I figured that's how it would work. Didn't all think about it coming from anyone else. Like that wasn't even.
Can you give a couple of examples, or at least one? How would you see your financial needs met? If he's no longer doing, hey, let's do this Babylonian employment to secure that paycheck, how were your needs met?
Well, at first I thought they would all come through his employment. I didn't think it would be any. I just thought that he would spend less time doing that than he had to, so it would be more freed up. So it would basically I figured, okay, we'll get enough more clients that he'll have the passive income that will just meet our needs. So not extra, but enough that we can get by. And that's how I thought it would happen. But he told us also, just trust me. Just trust me, do what I tell you to do, and somehow it'll work out. And I just said, we'd been up and down financially. Dustin had been building a company for about 4 years that was supposed to be we expected a multi-million-dollar a year when it was fully done. And he was pretty close within about 6 months or so, or of starting to get some pretty good income from that. And he'd been just putting everything into that. When we sort of woke up to everything and just lost desire for all of it, we just didn't care.
In other words, the big worldly paycheck.
Yes, the huge worldly paycheck. And, we just didn't care about it anymore. And we just thought, I don't care, but we also don't have a way to bridge that gap. But the Lord said, just trust me, it'll be filled somehow. You'll get by.
So it sounds like the two of you were on the same page. Dustin, how are you seeing your needs met? Were you recognizing instructions not to be actively involved in securing that big paycheck?
I was told that that I should just dedicate all my time to the work of the Lord.
Can you give a 30-second description of what that means? Dedicate all your time to the Lord, doing what?
Well, I had recently learned about the doctrine of Christ and become passionate about it. And I just had an inner drive to share it with anyone, just everyone. And it just became my all-consuming obsession. And it's been like that ever since, today.
So how do you go about this missionary work? The physical actions that you do, are you knocking on doors like these white shirts and ties that tend to go around?
Nope. No, it's different. In the day in the life for me, it's literally around the clock. We figure I spend about 3 hours per night sleeping, and that's often even dreaming about it. The rest of the time is just going from phone call to phone call, texting, going online. I do a lot of work on Facebook, posting, answering questions, making comments.
You extend a lot of invitations. I learned about the Doctrine of Christ community by your invitation. Let me ask you this. I met you around February of 2020. Since 2019 until now, how many people have you personally baptized?
I haven't kept track, but word on the street is it's at least 65.
Okay. Now, 65 people baptized. Will you at least share, how does somebody, because this isn't meant to be a doctrinal discussion, but I want them to understand, what commitment does somebody believe they are making if they're entering into the waters of baptism the way that you teach the doctrine of Christ?
Yeah, well, we teach that it's how you formalize your commitment to the new and everlasting covenant. And essentially, what that means is it's a covenant that I personally entered into about 6 years ago. That I mentioned briefly a little while ago in this interview. You're essentially committing to offer up a broken heart and contrite spirit, which really means that you're willing to dedicate your all to the Lord. You're willing to represent Him. You're willing to do His will in all things, to serve as a witness of Him and to teach His gospel, the doctrine of Christ. Um, my understanding from that point on, even though at that point 6 years ago I didn't know it was called the New and Everlasting Covenant. In the church we grow up thinking it's something else that's totally unrelated to what it really is. But my understanding when I entered into it 6 years ago, I promised the Lord I would do everything that He wanted me to do, and in return for that, His promise is that He would baptize us with fire and with the Holy Ghost, and we would be prepared to eventually enter into the rest of the Lord, which means coming into His presence in the fullness of His glory during this mortality while we're still alive.
Okay. I want to ask because people are wondering, so what are these accusations against you of priestcraft? Um, one of the scriptures that comes to mind is when somebody sets themselves up as a light. Let me ask you this. Outside of your movie character role as Hiram Smith, have you ever claimed to anybody that you were Hiram in a previous existence and have some sort of authority now because of that?
No.
Ever?
Nope.
Okay.
No. Now obviously I look like Hiram. I mean, I was a natural fit to play him. And when you're serving the Lord full time, and you can't help, and you happen to look like, a
You've
certain
heard people that have
person.
made those connections because you did play him in a movie.
Yeah. I'll admit there are times where I just can't help but kind of wonder, and but I've never made that claim that I am or was Hiram.
Okay. Let me ask this. Do you guys have a home of your own right now?
No, we don't.
How let me just ask generically, why not?
That's a really good question.
I can't think of how else to ask it. Like, why don't you have your own home? Because 15 years in the financial industry, giving financial advice, works on your own business, where it looks like there might be a light at the end of the tunnel to where there's 7 figures or more that end up being in the bank account. Why don't you have your own home now?
Yeah, so we moved out of our last house July 1st of last year, 2021.
So 12 plus months of not having your own home.
Right. Um, when we put everything on the table, we just said, okay. And the promises we believe the Lord made to us were that we would always be fed, we would always have a roof over our head. And, but He said, you never have to ask for anything, I will provide it. And so when we moved out, we looked around for a house, nothing was right. And so Lord's like, just wait. I will provide everything you need right now. And so, it's been a year of about half a year we stayed in Park City and rented a condo for a while.
Okay.
And basically it took me a while. We thought we would look off and on, and I kept asking the Lord, why aren't we finding a house? What is this about? I don't understand. Why what is wrong with us, basically?
It sounds like you're open to still maintaining employment if that's the instructions you recognize from the Lord.
Yeah, and He did that. I mean, a lot of His instructions is He goes by the Spirit all day, and He'll be like, call this person, and then it'll switch to, like, work, and so He does both still. Like, He does still do both.
Well, let me ask this. Between the Doctrine and Covenants and the Book of Mormon, there's probably a couple of dozen specific scriptures along these lines. Those who are engaged in the work of the Lord, they're dutiful in their labors until it's time to preach. They leave their labors, and then once the preaching is done, the ministering's done, right back to their labors. Why aren't you interpreting your current missionary assignments in that light?
Well, I dedicated everything all my time and energy to the work of the Lord and to obeying, his commandments that come to me individually. And I just do what he tells me to do. I mean, he's the one that's having me do whatever it is.
How do your how have you seen your financial needs be met? Because the concern is, and the things being said publicly about you without your presence and even without your invitation, it sounds like until just a few hours ago, you got your first ever invitation to hear what's being said about you publicly.
Well, it wasn't the first invitation. It was just the first time I ever heard one of my accusers actually say what I'm being accused of. Everything else has been through the grapevine over the last couple of weeks.
Okay. So now, how do you get your needs met? What's being said about you is you'll make sure that this story of we just do what the Lord wants us to do and we trust him, and there's at least some sort of implication, especially people new to the doctrine of Christ community, that they should be giving you money. Have you played any part in putting out that messaging?
I wasn't aware of any expectation like that.
Okay.
I really hope not. Like we've
Have you well, let me ask this, have you received money from other individuals? Can you at least share how you view those circumstances of receiving money from others?
Yeah, well, it happens on excuse me, on a regular basis. Somebody will out of the blue say, this is from Father, and they'll hand me something. Occasionally it's money, occasionally it's food, sometimes clothing. Um, or they'll say, the Spirit is telling me that I should give you this, you know, or a variation that statement in virtually every case. Not every case, but I'd say
Can you share
probably
what it's like
80% of the time or
in
more.
a case when it's not like that? What happens?
In a case where it's not like that, it'll be somebody just, like putting, like some money in my hand, just kind of sneaking in my hand and just walking off,
Okay.
where they don't say anything, but they're just kind of being sneaky about putting it in my hand. That would be an example of that.
Okay. I hear that your children don't have stable meals. There's times of food insecurity. Is that accurate?
No.
Why not?
We've always had plenty of
It
food.
there's specific stories that I've heard people share saying their children are not allowed to eat throughout the day, and it's not until 6:30 at night that they're fed.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, that particular day, I had to go run one of my daughters to a place like an hour away. And so there were a couple of us that were doing that. We left leftovers and they ate that for lunch, the kids that were
They
left
had
at
breakfast,
home.
they had lunch.
Yeah. And then I didn't get back and I was bringing the groceries until yeah, it was about 6:30. So, yeah, there was time between lunch and 6:30 at night, and that is a longer break than usual, and it was we didn't expect that. It was just kind of an unusual day. But I still don't think that's
In
really
Well, let
unusual
me ask this, in
to
this journey, especially these last 12 months to where don't have permanent housing, and not even a long-term layout of what's gonna happen in the future, has there been days that your children have had to go without food?
no, never.
Never. Never.
No, they
The
always have food, always have
the
we always have a
things
place to
like,
stay.
what about the other necessities? Clothing, a place to stay, medical attention?
Yeah, we've
Would it
always all
would
those
it
things have always been provided without lapse. There's never been a lapse.
is there anything that you can think of? Would it be reasonable for outside observers to have that concern? In other words, are there clues that they'd be looking at to say, "I'm worried they're not getting what they need?" The
Um,
idea of not having a permanent home, that's not only is it stressful, but it's other people who care about you and children.
Well,
I
we've got this, it's a cultural tradition, there's this arbitrary level what do you call it? Standard of living that,
Which is amazingly high in the United States compared to just
yeah,
about anywhere else in the world.
right. And, what we've experienced firsthand is, persecution because we don't appear to be living at some arbitrary standard of living.
Persecution in what form?
Oh, well, these kinds of accusations, for example, that's a really blatant version of it.
Have you had
Um,
people tell you that you're wicked for what you're doing?
not directly,
no.
but you know, there's been some passive aggressive
Yeah.
aggressive
Yeah, I've
comments.
certainly heard it personally. I know in the past 3 weeks there's been at least a dozen public hours dedicated to discussing your lifestyle without your presence. Um, one of the main concerns is you're involved what's being said publicly. You're involved in Scientology and not only involved in Scientology, but actually trying to promote techniques used by Scientologists in the Doctrine of Christ community.
Okay,
How did that get misunderstood?
I had no idea, other than and I'd never heard that one before that I'm trying to promote
First
it. This
time?
is first time I heard that one.
Okay.
There was
I'm
the
telling you,
only
there's hours dedicated to these kinds of discussions, and this is the first time it's been brought to your attention?
well, the only I've heard that I was, there was something first I heard that I was being accused or we were being accused as a family of being, Satanists, that we worship, Baal or Baal or however you say it.
How long ago was that brought to your attention?
About 2 weeks ago. I
Okay.
think that was it was either the next day or the second day after, you know, the
What were the circumstances by which somebody brought that to you? Was it somebody making the accusation or saying the accusation is being said?
somebody that was there,
Okay.
at the public, I don't even know what to call it,
So,
slander
just
fest
for
or something.
context, for those that are tuning in, it was 2 Thursday nights ago, and I wasn't there, but I've spoken to people who were there. I know that there's huge divisions. There's multiple hours in a row dedicated to discussing your lifestyle without your presence. And the general determination is they've gone so dark, they cannot be trusted. Certain things. Well, how did somebody, can you think of any way somebody would misinterpret? Are you a Scientologist?
No.
Have you learned from them and shared their techniques?
Um, I think I know where there's only one possibility in my mind where that could have originated. I was having excuse me. I was having a really good conversation with a couple of people who had been victimized by you know, it was ritual abuse, and they were going through a healing process with a counselor that specializes in helping people who have gone through ritualistic abuse, how to help them recover from it. Well, 10 years ago, I came across a guy who had learned, or actually he owned a private clinic that uses these same kinds of techniques to help people, you know, recover from these traumatic ritual abuse experiences. And it's the modality that he uses, or well, not him specifically, but the people he hires to run his clinic use a modality referred to as Dianetics, and it's somehow connected to Scientology, or that's the modality that the Scientologists
So it
use.
sounds like it's kind of either second or third hand. You learned from somebody who learned it from Scientologists.
Well,
Would you say, is this
I
something you learned or participated in?
well, I had a traumatic experience myself where my dog he ran out in the street, or he was like for us, he was our first son. You know, we really were connected to him, and he died in my arms after being run over, and it traumatized me. I mean, I couldn't. I'm getting emotional right now,
Yeah.
but back then I couldn't even talk without just
Overload.
losing it. You know, I just bawl my head off. Um, and you know, I tried talking to, you know, I hired a counselor to try to help me through it. Didn't seem to have any effect. You know, I still was really traumatized, and I was preoccupied with it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. It would just haunt every thought, it seemed. And I ended up, I was at a business networking club meeting in Las Vegas, where people came from all over the country and some from other countries in the world. And I met this guy who you know, was talking about this method that he, you know, was promoting, and he owned a clinic to help people with it. Um, and and he let me have a DVD that talked about it. It was basically an introduction to Dianetics. Um, and so I watched the video and thought, well, maybe he could help me with this trauma. and he was offering to help me.
Was he sharing any of this in a capacity as part of a Scientology group?
No, he just on the side. We were talking. We kind of became friends during this conference.
Did it provide relief? Do you use those? Do you believe in those techniques now?
Well, um, he invited me to go to his clinic and and go through a session of this process to see if it would help. And I I did after watching that video, it was clear to me that it was somehow connected to Scientology, even though this was a separate clinic. It wasn't, directly connected, though
You saw some links.
I saw some links and did some research, and I had mixed feelings. I wanted to be, to be healed, and for some reason, right now, I would tell somebody without missing a beat, let Christ heal you. Turn to the priesthood, you get a priesthood blessing, that kind of thing. But back then, for some reason, there was a disconnect. It wasn't clear to me. So I consulted one of my best friends who was a bishop at the time. Another one of my best friends was a retired psychologist. I got their opinion, and they said, "Well, I think I think it may be able to help you out." A little leery, but not overly concerned. And so the three of us, we decided that it was worth a try.
Okay.
And this came up in the conversation, excuse me, in question, because this couple was going through a counseling process that was virtually identical. In fact, if it didn't have the label, I would have said it's the same process.
Yep.
It's the same exact thing.
So it sounds like because I mean, we'll share more of the story a different time. But I'm not hearing from you. You've never been a part of Scientology. You've never been to a Scientologist meeting.
No, that's why I was leery of it. Because
in other words, tell me if I'm accurately shortening this. You learned a technique that was at least connected to Scientology as you're trying to deal with the grief of having lost your son.
Right. Yeah. So basically, 10 years ago, I went through virtually the same process that this couple is currently undergoing.
Okay.
And so I made the connection, like, oh, this is the same type of thing that that Scientologists used to deal with traumatic stress disorder and that kind of thing.
Let me ask this. I've heard it said in some of these public meetings where you're discussed without being present that you do not allow your children to talk about the doctrine of Christ at home. How did that come about?
No, I think that came from one of our daughters met who she thought maybe would be her best friend. Like, she was just so happy. There was a meeting.
Is a teenage daughter, preteen?
No, she's 8.
Okay.
She was just really excited because everywhere we go, it's really hard to find people that love the doctrine of Christ like we do. And both of our families have pretty much ordered us not to talk about it because it can be a divisive subject to them, I guess. And we honor that. So, and then she doesn't have any friends necessarily that have the same beliefs either. And so she was just really excited to find someone who she could talk openly and had the same belief in Christ and the doctrine of Christ. So that just got twisted somehow. It wasn't that we don't talk about that at home. We do scripture study as much as we can, those kinds of things. She was just excited to have a friend that she could talk to about it too.
Mm-hmm. And was there a comment made that we can't talk about the doctrine of Christ from one of your kids? Because here's what I'm hearing from you. You probably had a discussion with your kids where, hey, don't cause problems with the family. Was there anything like that?
I don't remember exactly, but probably they just understand that. I can't remember exactly what conversations we've had, but they understand that neither of our families necessarily believes the same way we do.
Well, I think probably everybody in this community has gone through some form of, if you bring up these discussions around these people, you're not going to be staying for dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've heard, I mean, I've literally been yelled at, to shut up, when I tried to share the doctrine of Christ with our extended family members. And we've been formally uninvited from events and formally banned from mentioning any of it in family text threads or email threads or any of those kinds of things. So I mean, it's a given in our in our extended family get-togethers that we don't talk about anything along those lines about the church or religion or anything. And
Let me
so yeah, she was so excited to finally have a friend where she could actually talk about the doctrine of Christ with her and not be censored.
let me ask this. I'm going to a couple of questions that people have submitted via the live chat. Patrick asks, are these social issues or civic issues? The whole thing sounds strange. What are the accusations? And hopefully in the course of this, I brought up enough of the accusations. Have people brought the accusations that you've been made aware of, either through the grapevine or in this discussion, has evidence ever been presented to you of it?
No, we've just heard things.
Have you ever
That said that we did that, but no one has ever actually, like, people that said, "Hey, you're doing this," but no one that actually has offered us money or offered us anything. No one has ever said
Yeah.
that to us.
In other words, somebody who's aware of somebody supporting you and they're finding fault, but nobody who has ever given you money has ever expressed concern afterwards?
Right.
No, and also another thing, it sounded like people were having problems with us. We have stayed with a few people that have offered to let us stay with them, and we've had nothing but good experiences with that. I mean, we've always felt like we left and, having, like, new grandparents almost for our kids, just this close relationship, really getting to know the families that we stayed with and just feeling like they're friends and family for life now. No one has ever come to us and said, "We had a bad experience, let's work this out."
If
So I
so,
feel horrible about that. I mean, living with someone, I'm sure we're not perfect. I'm sure we maybe did some things that maybe were hard. I don't know. We've always tried our best to make it a win-win and do that as much as possible.
I didn't hear any rumors about Dustin's wild flatulence, and hopefully that doesn't surface. But let me ask you
I
this:
think that's projection.
if somebody, how would you respond if somebody did come to you and say, "Hey, we felt like we were taking advantage of you. We felt like we were taken advantage of by you."
Well, of course, it would be surprising. It would be shocking. So I would just want to know, just tell me more. I'm a good listener, and I would just want to hear them out,
Would you,
understand
Yeah, I would.
if anybody
where
has
they're
that
coming
concern,
from.
let's just say that somebody listening may be feeling like that. Would you welcome them to approach you
Yes,
about that
Absolutely.
please.
concern?
Please come talk to us. Like, I feel so horrible if anything like that happened. We honestly, I feel like when you said about why we don't have a house, it's actually been pretty recent in the last several months that I realized the reason we don't have a house is largely because of me. A house was my idol, and I prayed to have
Oh,
my idols removed.
ouch.
And
You
honestly,
got to learn what to stop praying for.
no, I mean it. When I
Yeah.
say that I want to be a better person, I mean it.
Mhm.
And our last house I loved so much that I started to forget the Lord. I really think I did.
Okay.
And I get really comfortable with all my things perfectly around me, and so I think the Lord took it away for that reason. And I'm a stubborn person, and it's taken over a year so far, and I still don't have one. I do think we'll get one eventually, but I also think that one lesson he's taught us is that to be, I think all of us in this community are trying to make it to Zion and be that type of a person. And we have to learn to be on both sides. For me, I've been this tremendously independent person ever since as soon as I could get a job, I got a job. As soon as I could go to college, I went when I was 17. Like, I just wanted to be independent. And I feel like a big part of my life since dedicating it to the Lord is like, okay, you get to be the receiver. And I don't like receiving very much. I don't like to be on that side of it. It is extremely hard for me to not have a house and to say the Lord have people give us things or offer things. And uh so we have to be good we have to do both ways. I mean, I personally, I just really like being on the giving rather than the receiving side, but I have also felt extremely blessed to see how generous people have been with us at the same time. So I'm it really has helped me understand both sides better. um if that makes any
It
sense.
sure
Yeah,
does.
and then, like from my perspective as the man of the home, our expectation, especially in our culture in the church, is the man provides.
Yeah.
Provides, protects,
In
and
the public discussions about you guys, that's probably the main thing that you're leveled with, and in very down-putting terms, that you're not being the man of the home.
yeah, and to be viewed as I'm sure we are, and when we knew this going into it, that people would view us as a charity case, or they would get the wrong idea and think that we, need us.
Does anybody have any obligation to donate to you?
No, please, no, no. And in
Absolutely not.
fact, when we started on this process, I was worried about it. I said a prayer to the Lord, and I just said, "Heavenly Father, can I rely on Dustin? Can I rely on him to provide for us? This is scary. I don't to go out on a limb like this if we're gonna really be dedicated." And I got a very strong no answer, and I thought, "Whoa,
I can't
okay,
rely
I
on
really
Dustin.
can't rely on him." But it wasn't that. It was that the Lord said, "No, specifically, you trust me and I provide for you. You're not supposed to be relying on him. It's me."
Well, there's been others in this community who have jumped into that sort of idea. They believed they were receiving an answer from the Lord, and they failed. They were regularly asking people for money until there was enough people who were on the giving end telling them, "You need to do what you needed to take care of this for yourself." And it sounds like this isn't something that you guys have wanted to jump into. But
No.
Yeah, this
No.
isn't something we chose for ourselves. This came as a result of practicing what we preach.
let me ask this. Here's another question, and hopefully I'm interpreting correct. We've got Blah Bacon, good screen name. Hey, Dustin, why did you choose to do this after a year and a half? Why not earlier or later? And I think when he says do this, he's referring to the decision to, well, I'm not going to be working a 9 to 5 or some sort of other regular paycheck, but I'm going to be full-time Lord's work, trusting on his good graces. Why not earlier?
We weren't.
We were told to.
It just, yeah. We there were some experiences where some seeds that had been planted, of hearing about, people in foreign countries, Christians that were, you know, trusting in the Lord to provide. Like there's one example. In fact, you'd be better at explaining it probably, but there's a man named George Mueller, for example, who was a contemporary of Joseph Smith. He lived in Germany.
Well, he was from Germany, but then he moved to London. In his young 20s, he went to ministerial school, and then he just felt called to start some orphanages. But he felt called to do them in a totally different way because at the time, and even currently, they would usually get patrons, wealthy people, to sponsor that orphanage. But he wanted it to be purely revelation from the Lord that funded all those orphanages. So he said that he'll never ask for money from anyone except for God. And that's what happened. He would pray sometimes with the employees, and they started out very small, but they had small miracles where people would literally walk a couple miles and give him coins and say, "This is for your orphanage." And they would have milk trucks that would, break down in front, or wagons at the time. And so there was the milk for the day. And they always had food, and everything was provided for these kids. And they grew until by the time he died, there were tens of thousands of kids that had been taken off these streets, and this is London when it was horrible for kids. And they'd been taught about Christ, and I think millions of dollars had gone, or the equivalent of that had gone through
Say
his
his
hands.
name again.
George Mueller.
George Mueller. So it
George
sounds
Mueller.
like
He's very, very famous.
you became aware
Christian.
of an account where you saw God's hand acting in his work.
Right.
Have you? Let me ask this: Do you continue to see God's hand in the current path that you're on this last year and now?
Yeah, we've had miracle after miracle, honestly, and we'll save that for a future podcast, I
Okay.
think. But
We'll do that. We'll sit down
um,
and just specifically talk faith journey. But in other words, has there been the people who have brought concerns to you, as well as made lots and lots of accusations without you present to hear it? Has that been enough for you to consider you're probably wrong in this?
yeah, well, it was before these accusations, really, but we've had, people for the last few years every once in a while say like, I don't think you're doing that right. And so every time, because mostly they're people we really trust their judgment, we respect them. And so we would always go to Lord and say, tell us if we're wrong on this. We don't want to do anything wrong. We just want to do whatever you're telling us to do. And the last time we did that was, we do it continually, always, just every day. Okay, correct us. Tell us what we're doing wrong. But about a month and a half ago, we met with a couple of people and kind of shared again why we do what we do, what we believe we're supposed to be doing. And, they suggested that maybe we're doing what we want to do, not what the Lord maybe wants us to do. And so once again, we took it to the Lord and said, please, how about just make us fail? If this isn't what we're supposed to do, then don't provide for us. Make us fall. Like, just whatever. We're okay with that. We just want to do what you want us to do.
Yeah. So you're asking for it to come to a head if it needs to.
I said, yeah, please just let us fail. Don't provide food. Don't provide a house for like anywhere for us to stay. We're okay with that. If we have to live in a car for a couple days just to know that we're on the wrong path, let us just do that. But what happened instead of that was that the next 4 days, we actually every single day we had nothing, like nothing. At the beginning of that day, in terms of money, or like, so that night we had no food. We had no food and we had nowhere to stay that day. For 4 days in a row.
Were your children fed the day before?
Well, yeah, of course.
Okay. And now what happened?
They literally have never missed a meal.
So every day, somehow we would get enough money to have well fed and a place to stay for the night. And it happened 4 days in a row. And every day it was like just enough for that day. And to us, that was the Lord saying, look, I am providing for you. This is what we're supposed to do.
Let me give the last question that came this way. From James, do you, the Smiths, feel like others should be doing what you're currently doing? Dedicate all their time to preaching the doctrine of Christ. And I'm interpreting that to mean not focusing on being the one responsible for your own finances through employment.
Can I answer that? At least, well, both.
Sure.
No, I don't know that that's the path for everyone. I know that's what we've been asked to do. And I think probably others will be too. And a lot of people have expressed to, mostly Dustin, that they're feeling that call from the Lord to go that direction. And people have said like we're doing without script. And I would say we're weaning ourselves maybe toward that is kind of what it feels like, because we're preparing, because we do still mostly have our own income. We don't completely do that at all. But I feel like it would probably be hard to just go cold turkey to that. What I do think that we do that everyone.
I think there's some of the miracle stories in the Old Testament. Who was it that was receiving food from the crows that would bring it to him? It was Elijah or somebody that was receiving it. But wonderful stories of that. I'm glad I'm not asked to do that, and it sounds like you're not asked to be at that level.
No, not completely or anything. But I feel like it's really helped to, I think, get us used to that, because I do believe that there will be a time for that, like completely.
Where it's rely upon the miracles of God.
Completely, yeah. I would say the thing that we do that everyone should be doing, though, is completely entering into covenant with him and doing everything he tells you, and don't put stakes in the ground like, well, I have to have a house. I have to.
Heavenly Father, I'll do whatever you want as long as it's within these bounds.
Well, I think
I have to be the one to provide,
Yeah, I think we just have these expectations, these cultural traditions, that we think, oh, God would never ask that of me. And, in our next podcast, we'll talk about that story too.
So let me ask the same question of Dustin. Dustin, do you believe others are supposed to be doing what you and Marin are doing right now?
Like she mentioned, several people have approached me saying, I'm feeling like I'm supposed to start doing something along those lines, or, cold turkey going without purse or script. And one of those people actually came to me and he was asking me some questions about it. And, I just, at one point I asked, I'm just curious, why did you decide to approach me and ask me about this? And he said, well, the Spirit told me that I should reach out to you and ask you about it. I said, well, was it because you knew that I was doing something like this? And he said, what? No, are you? He had no idea that the Spirit had directed him to consult with me on how this will work, it would work in his life, and so I saw that as another witness of the Lord works with people individually. He doesn't always go through another person to give them, advice or direction. He most often works with us if we're willing to submit our will to His. Um, that being said, I do believe that at some point, some of the Lord's servants will be commanded to go without personal script. We've seen precedents for it in scriptures many times. The Lord's apostles, for example, and even early members of the LDS Church, went out without personal script for periods of time.
But let me
Um,
just ask, you're not viewing that as the calling that everybody should aspire to right now?
No, this is individually given to us. I was called by the Lord Himself to serve a full-time mission, and that's what I've been doing ever since then.
Okay.
But I wouldn't push it on anybody else. It's an individual thing. I know that there's at least one case that I know of where somebody was um, I guess he was admiring what we were doing and wanted to do it himself. And so he hopefully I'm representing this story correctly, but as I understand it, he tried to go cold turkey without personal script.
Yeah.
And got to the point where he realized that if he didn't stop doing this, he was going to be homeless,
Yeah.
and
The person that you're referring to has a long list of people that he's personally asked for money and help.
yeah, see that, and I don't know if he was called to do that or if he was just wanting to do it or what direction he was given, but we were specifically told, I mean, there's no question that you are not to ask people for money. It has to be provided by me, as in the Lord. I'm the one that will provide it, and it will not be because you ask for it or hint at it or imply that you need this. It's going to be I will inspire people, and they will provide it or through other means.
Yeah, or through work or however.
Yeah.
I know we could talk about these things for long extended times. I feel like all the questions that have currently been asked in the live stream have been asked. If any of you are tuning into this conversation after the live stream, still put comments of any questions if there's enough. And if there's things that haven't been covered, I'm sure I'd be able to do follow up with Dustin and Marin. But let me ask, Marin and then Dustin, if you would end us with your testimony of the Savior and how you trust in Him moving forward.
I'll go
We can go,
first.
Dustin.
Well, yeah, like I mentioned, it was 6 years ago where I dedicated everything to the Lord. I'd really been it may have been like a midlife crisis. I don't know if it officially that, but I got to the point where I was feeling really um I was feeling regret. I was like halfway through my life and it's kind of a like, what have I got to show for it? Mostly from a spiritual point of view. I consider myself a good person. I did all the things we're expected to do in the church, and I hadn't done anything that would get me in the bishop's office. Um, but I knew deep down that I was letting the Lord down. I had turned down, like somebody would call and invite me to, say the opening prayer in church, for example, or to give a talk. And I would turn those things down because it scared me to death. Um, I was, uh, I was really, I was shy. I had a fear of public speaking. That was probably my biggest fear in the world. Um, and I'd always breathe a sigh of relief when somebody else was called to be the elders quorum president or the bishop of the ward. Those kinds of things. I was like, phew, so glad it wasn't me. Um, and I just knew that I knew deep down the Lord had something different or something greater in mind, but I didn't know what. Um, I felt like I was just kind of scared and hiding in the shadows. So that's not a good way to put it, but um,
Off the radar.
there you go. That's yeah, off the radar. And I knew that the Lord wanted me to be, actively serving Him in the ways that I didn't understand because it was just kind of a thought in the middle of in the back of my mind, just kind of something I felt in my heart. And so just one day It was actually during a personal development conference or a 3-day seminar workshop where, help people, work on themselves, improve in areas where they're falling short or they're lacking. And for me, the most glaring uh, problem in my life was this idea that I wasn't serving the Lord to full capacity, and I knew deep down that He wanted me to. Well, it bothered me so much at that point that I got to the point where I turned to the Lord and I promised Him. I just basically promised that no matter what you want me to do, I will do it. You know, I don't care what it is. Um, I will be 100% obedient to you from here on out, even if it's something that scares me to death, even if it's something where I might lose my life or lose whatever it is. I don't care. I'm just gonna from here on out, I'm just gonna do my very best to follow your voice. Well, as soon as I did that, I actually literally did hear his voice. It was in my mind, but it was as audible as the voice that I would have heard with my physical ears. And that voice was, I will lead you. And instantly I felt like all my sins, all my regrets had just been taken away, just washed away. Just not a remnant of regret or anything that from anything I'd ever done in my life. And it's just like wiped clean. And along with that, all my fears, all my anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety up to that point in my life. Um, I was what my mom referred to as a worry wart. I'd always be worried about what might happen. I'd expect the worst, and rarely did the worst ever happen, but I still worried about that it might. Um, all those fears, all my phobias. I had arachnophobia really badly. I had claustrophobia. Um, Fear of public speaking was my biggest one. That was just taken away just in an instant, just gone. Um, Literally every fear went away, and it hasn't returned. It's been 6 years now, 6 years and a couple months, or a month or 2 anyway. 6 years, and I've literally had no fear of anything since then.
Not
It's
even the
not an
spider.
exaggeration.
Not even the spider that came out when we were praying a little bit earlier. There's when we're
No, in
here's
fact, I now I and as part of that experience, I lost my desire to kill any animal. I can't bring myself to even kill a spider, and that was
I'm
something
sorry I
that's
did
like
that.
it's like, I would have to that spider must be destroyed. But now I literally will catch the spider in a cup, and take it outside and let it go because
You're free.
yeah. And that was
I sent him
huge
to the
change that
eternal
happened to
realm.
me. Yeah. I used to go fishing on a daily basis, especially around the time that we started dating and, in early years in our marriage, I would go fishing almost every day. Uh, and I haven't even done that since this experience, other than just to go and hang out with people where I think I might be able to, you know, talk to the doctrine of Christ with them or something. And I can't even bring myself to thread a worm on the hook anymore. Um, I'm a fly fisherman anyway, so how to do that except to hang out with people, and then they doing the worm thing. I just can't do that. So there were all these amazing changes that I became a different person, and I suddenly had confidence, whereas before I was really shy. In fact, what was it, next day or a couple of days later anyway, in church, I went up and bore my testimony. Just I told the Lord, I'll do it this time if you want me to. It's kind of interesting because the answer he gave me was, well, it's up to you. You're a leader now, you know.
Let me
And there's more to that story.
There is, and that'll be part of the faith journey. Let me just throw your direction before I ask Maren to share to close us with her testimony. Another question came in, another one from Blah Bacon, great scream name. So, with all of these accusations and rumors that have been said for just hours and hours publicly without you knowing about it, how with all that's been going on, do you still want to be a part of Doctrine of Christ meetings? And how do you currently feel about this group or community, the Doctrine of Christ community that has seemed like it's risen very organically?
Yeah. Well, I actually played a big role in building that community. I've been the admin of just about everything. And I built it from scratch, with help from others, but I was there from the beginning.
Are you currently an admin of anything now?
Not directly related to it. No, that
Mm.
was before I even knew what was going on. I'd already been kicked out of every group on Telegram, on Facebook, you name it. It was clear to me that they didn't want me to even know what was happening to
And
me.
before kicking you out, did anybody bring concerns directly to you? Did anybody say, Dustin, if you don't get a job, you're going to be kicked out?
Nope. Nope, nothing
No,
like that.
we'd had discussion. We knew we didn't agree with a couple people about things,
It
but
sounds like just two.
yeah, but I mean, we talked at least a month or so ago, but it had left kind of like we agree to disagree. This is what I think. This is what we think.
Did you get the
It
impression
wasn't.
that they felt authority over how you live your life?
Yeah, it
Absolutely.
seemed like that.
Did it feel like they were being guided by the Spirit?
No,
No.
no, I felt like they were bullying us. Like
Okay.
we were being persecuted for being in the situation we were, and
Because the two that we're thinking about who wanted to say, we already found the house for you. If you haven't gotten the answer, I don't want to rehash that story here, but let me at least give the general details. They took you to a home. This is perfect for you. Okay, well, the Lord's told us this isn't it. And instead, well, let me get you guys to keep praying until you get the answer that I want. There's a bit of spell casting to where keep praying until.
yeah. Well, I was literally told, "Well, you're not getting the right answer because you're not listening to the Lord, and He has to speak through me to you because you're not listening to the right
Did that
voice."
individual tell you that you had a demon that had to be cast out?
Yeah, he said, and it's because you're possessed, and we need to do a casting out right now.
Okay.
And this
Now,
this
now,
in
now
front
that
of
that individual, I know that he's done that to numerous people in the Doctrine of Christ community.
yeah.
He'll prey upon them and say, "Because you're getting a different answer than me, your eyes are as dark." Did he say your eyes were as dark as charcoal?
He didn't say as dark as charcoal, but he said your eyes are black, and then I allowed him to perform a casting out on me.
Did
And
you
then he said,
did it fix
"Well,"
you?
he said, "Wow, the colors come back to your eyes. I can see a color." Thinking back on it, a little later, it's like, well, we were in the dark. I have
It's
dark brown eyes. Of
See,
course, I gotta like,
it is spell casting. But we'll leave that alone. But I know what two individuals have taken it upon themselves to try to control the lifestyles of others in the Doctrine of Christ community.
Yeah.
Marin, bring us home on a high note. You're the closing act, and I hate to say it that way. Will you share your testimony of the Savior and how you believe you'll continue to follow him as you move forward from this?
Yeah, first of all, we love everyone in the Doctrine of Christ community. That has been, a family for us, really. And I've had so many good experiences. So honestly, we don't know where we go from here exactly. We just get our directions from the Lord, and it's always been that way. We try not to put anyone between us and the Lord, although we have not been perfect about that. Looking back, we have put some people between there to some extent, more than we should have. And so right now, I just want to take a while, to be determined how long that is, to just go straight back to the Lord. Really decide what our beliefs are. Make sure we are strong as a family, strong as a couple. Um, just keep studying the scriptures. I don't know. I've learned not to project what I think my path is going to look like, because the Lord just keeps doing all these twists and turns that I don't expect, but I learn from it in no other way than if I hadn't turned my life, like the Jesus take the wheel thing, right? There are so many things I never would have thought to do on my own, but because I've turned it over to him and just say, "Okay, we'll do whatever you want." In hindsight, it's amazing. And honestly, a lot of them that we've just realized this week are things that, the end times coming, I think, are gonna be very crazy. They're starting to be very crazy already for us. Um, just I don't think there's any way we can navigate that without turning completely over to the Lord, because we don't know, like, in our logic, we can think that doing this makes sense, but the Lord can, like, navigate around obstacles we don't even know are coming. There are a few of those that have already happened to us, and I just stand back and look, "Whoa, holy cow." If I had done that on my own, I would have done this, and now I understand why you did it that way. It was for maybe our protection in certain cases, or I don't wanna give specifics here, but anyway, that whole idea. Um, and as far as my testimony, I love my Savior. I grew up a member of the church, and I loved it. Um, I never thought I could have any experiences directly with Christ, and so when I met some people that said they were having these experiences and said it was possible, I just got so excited and thought, "Wow, I always believed Christ could do miracles. I always knew it, but I just never thought it would be for me." Like, never in my life. I'm no one special. I'm just, introvert. Um,
Could you have seen yourself being a part of an interview like this 5 years ago?
no, and even this morning I was like, "Ugh, this is the only way anyone could get me to get on YouTube, or, like, YouTube Live especially. It's not my thing. I don't like it at all. I just like to see in the background, honestly. Um, but I will, if it can have a good effect, hopefully, on someone. Um, anyway, so I'm just actually really excited for the future. It feels like this grand adventure that I never ever thought would happen in my life. I've met the most amazing people, and the most amazing experiences, and my God is so amazing and real, and I just lived a boring life before that. So I would say, everyone, just turn your life over to God. Like, there's some rough days in the middle, but he always gives more than you give. I mean, I and sometimes, it's hard for a little while, but then bam, he just shows you all this stuff and gives you, like, makes you the person that you wanted to be. At least, I'm in the very small part of that, but um anyway, that's all I really have to say. I love him, and just can't wait for the future right now.
Thank you. I want to say, Dustin, Marin Smith, thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm grateful for being able to kneel down and offer open, sincere prayer where there's usually multiple people that participate because their hearts are a little bit too full for one person to express it all. But I'm grateful to be a part of a channel. I hope things have been cleared up as a result of this discussion. Appreciate your faith and your openness in being here.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Jacob.
Jacob.
Thank you so much.